want to welcome our next speaker, Casson, from Sloan Kettering, to talk about testicular cryopreservation.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. As she just mentioned, I'm Ann Casson. I'm one of the fertility nurse practitioners at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center here in Manhattan. Before transitioning to fertility, I was an NP in pediatrics doing transplant for most of my career. And so during that time, we always had an eye on long-term side effects and working to improve the outcome for our patients. And so I want to start by thanking all of you here, because we know the real drivers of change are the patients and their families. And I'm hoping that tomorrow is a better day for all of you. So we're going to talk about testicular tissue cryopreservation. And to start with, I always think it helps to just do a basic reproductive biology review for some of you who don't know reproductive medicine, very brief. Then we'll talk about the rationale for testicular tissue cryopreservation, and we'll end with some really exciting recent updates. So just really basic, post-pubertal males make sperm. So sperm banking is the gold standard for fertility preservation. However, the problem is pre-pubertal males do not make sperm, so that sperm banking is not an option. It's a cross-section of a testicle where spermatogenesis takes place. Spermatogenesis is just another fancy word for sperm production. Sperm production takes place deep in the testicle, in the seminiferous tubule, with these cells called spermagonial stem cells. What's interesting about these spermagonial stem cells that until the time of puberty, all that's happening with them is they're replicating and dying off. Then, once males hit puberty, now they have the hormones that are needed for sperm maturation. What happens is these spermagonial stem cells give rise to a spermatocyte. That spermatocyte, as it moves through the lumen of the seminiferous tubule and into the epididymis, matures. That process takes about 60 to 70 days. And then from the epididymis, it goes through the vas deferens into the seminal vessel, where it picks up 80% of the fluid and semen. From there, it goes on to the prostate, picks up the remaining 20%, and then is ejaculated through the urethra. So again, sperm maturation doesn't take place until you have those hormones of puberty. The potential impact that treatment can have on fertility, which is really what we're talking about in the setting of ALD, is the stem cell transplant or the gene therapy regimen to require gonatotoxic therapy. That gonatotoxic therapy, what we're worried about, is it going to kill off those spermagonial stem cells? If it kills off those spermagonial stem cells, that would render these males infertile, if it kills off all of them. Sometimes treatment can kill off some, but not all, and then over time they'll replicate. But what we really worry about is, will the treatment kill off those spermagonial stem cells? The biggest offenders of those are the alkylators, any radiation-containing regimen, but in general, in today's world, in general, those regimens of stem cell transplant are highly worrisome for killing off all of those spermagonial stem cells. And gene therapy, many of the regimens today still are concerning. The problem is we're not going to have real literature on some of these regimens for years. So they're still concerning. And again, the risk is based on the drugs. So just because somebody needs chemotherapy doesn't mean they'll be infertile. It's really about what drugs, and that's what drugs and what doses that they're getting. So what is testicular tissue cryopreservation? In those pre-pubertal boys that are getting this gonatotoxic therapy, testicular tissue cryopreservation is the option that we can speak to them about. So you would want to be at high risk for being rendered infertile in the future by your regimen. It's investigational today. It's very clear. We always guide our patients. It's investigational. There are no live births to date. But the idea is you're under anesthesia when they go to the OR, and it's a deep tissue biopsy of their testicle. And the idea is that they're going to capture some of those spermagonial stem cells in that tissue, and that's what they're going to freeze. Ideally, we do this before any treatment begins, and we always try to combine it. At our institution, we always try to combine it with another procedure, since it is experimental. And as I said, we always do emphasize that currently there are no live births to date. So what's the idea? What are we going to do? What's the plan for testicular tissue? There's two big arms of research going on. One is this autograft of the tissue back into the testes. So when they reach puberty or young adulthood and ready to build a family, ideally in the minds of all the people working with the tissue, they're thinking the optimal time is when these males hit their early 20s, when their hormones are at a maximum. They would reimplant. One avenue of research is to reimplant that tissue back into the testes. They have the hormones that are needed now for those spermagonial stem cells to mature. They follow them, they extract the mature sperm, and then the goal is to use that sperm for IVF reproduction. So that's one avenue of research. The other avenue of research is even more exciting, I think. And the idea they want to take those spermagonial stem cells and try and grow them in a lab and try and, in essence, create this slushy of spermagonial stem cells. Again, they wait till the plan is to wait till these males now hit their early 20s and then reinfuse those spermagonial stem cells back into the reedy testes, which is just the area right at the edge of the seminiferous tubule. And then the idea is to repopulate those spermagonial stem cells with a goal of natural reproduction. So in essence, reinstating fertility for these males. In 2019, the University of Pittsburgh had a monkey born using the testicular tissue by reimplanting the testicular tissue. It's exciting in the world of medicine because that's the last step before they can start human trials. So that was a very exciting development that they had there. As of this year, they have now opened up a protocol, the University of Pittsburgh, and they're the only ones in the country that we know of that have an open protocol now to start trying to reimplant the testicular tissue back into males. And we know that the first patient was done. We're anxiously waiting to hear what the results are. These are their criteria for who's a candidate, who are their first patients that they're going to be a candidate. The Tanner staging, it just means that they have to be post-pubertal, they have to be in good health. They do want to make sure that when that testicular tissue was frozen, that they had a disease, that they're not worried about reimplanting disease back into these males. That's mainly the leukemias and lymphoma patients. And so at our institution, the process is the medical team will discuss the risk with any of our patients that are at high risk for having anybody who's receiving highly gonadotoxic therapy. The medical team meets with them. They put in a fertility consult. There's 2 APPs. We meet with them to discuss the risks, walk them through the process, go through the risks, the benefits. And when we're talking about the risks, really the risk to our patients, if you're looking, there's a financial risk. It's not free. There's the surgery costs and then the freezing for years of the testicular tissue. And doing it to what end? We don't know right now. We know it's a possibility in their lifetime, but we can't promise that that tissue will ever be used. What we know today about the testicular biopsy, the biopsy itself doesn't do any damage to that testicle, so that if they're not rendered infertile from their treatment, we haven't done any damage in the process. The other big risk is, depending what disease we're talking about, that the science today can't test that tissue for disease today, but potentially in the future. So we go through the risks, the benefits, and then if the families elect to proceed, we have a really well-oiled plan where our surgery team works with us. We do all the coordination of care with the andrology labs at an outside institution, help get all the consents. We have patient financial services speak to the family, try and just figure out upfront what their costs will be, if there's any, at least for the surgery portion of it. Many times, like I said, we always strive to combine it with another procedure to bring down costs. And so many times the actual procedure is covered. And that's really where we are today.
Hi there. I was just wondering, so some kids, when they go through transplants, like my son was 4, so he didn't qualify to have this done. But you'd mentioned that some chemotherapeutic agents carried a higher risk of destroying fertility than others. Is there any information out there about which ones are more damaging to future fertility?
Yeah, that's pretty well described at most places. It's the alkylators, so cyclophosphamide, IPOS. The alkylators as a broad class, and it is. Did you say your son was 4? This is for prepubertal boys. Yeah, so it's only for prepubertal boys. This is from 0 to we have newborns to 14. We have 14-year-olds that haven't gone through puberty yet, so we've done 0 to 14.
Hi, and thank you so much for that. I was wondering if you could give us a snapshot of the families who look to pursue this, and I know this is going to vary depending on the child's age, but try to include their child in this decision-making process to do this. Just as a mother, I often wonder, like, what do those conversations look like? Are you privy to that?
We're involved in most of those conversations. So if they're over 7, they have to give assent. So we have to talk to the patient and the families, the parents and the. But honestly, because they're prepubertal, I think a lot of the information kind of goes over their head. They just know it's while they're in the OR, they're going to do another little quick procedure. I think we've had ethical dilemmas where one parent wants to do it and one parent doesn't, and those are kind of the more ethical dilemmas that have arisen. But the conversations with the patients, we walk them through the reason why, and they don't care about they're not thinking about family building in the future. So it's some of it I think they understand on a big picture, but not. I think the patient doesn't usually have any questions.
Thank you.
Just wondering if you could speak to the real-world cost for families on this and insurance coverage, and if they have a policy that does cover IVF for the adults in the family. How's that?
Of course, I can speak to the real world costs on like what we know. Right, it's going to be different across the country, but as I said, we always strive to combine. There's 2 parts of costs here for families. There's the actual surgery procedure. So it's either at their institution, wherever they are, or sometimes families have opted to fly to another institution who does it. Not every institution does testicular tissue. So there's the surgery cost. So when we combine it, we're told that the maximum outside cost that they will have, as long as they're going to the OR for some other reason, the maximum will be about $1,500. And usually they do have coverage for the procedure. Then it goes to an andrology lab. Most of ours are currently going to an andrology lab in New Jersey, and then there's processing costs that are about $1,000. They look at it, they analyze it, they freeze it. They actually look to see, especially our peripubertal boys, are there sperm in there? Is there anything that they can freeze? So they kind of tease out the sperm. And so those freezing costs are about $1,000, and then annual storage is about $600 a year in this area. But I think other places, annual storage could be closer to $200 a year if they send them to a long-term storage facility. Insurance doesn't cover storage today. And then obviously that would be the surgery procedures. Like right now, Pittsburgh says they're covering the cost because it's a IRB protocol if they're having it reimplanted. But I think, that's all could change in the future.
There's a question on Zoom. Have you done, I guess, this procedure with this particular population, so in the ALD community? Also wondering what other procedure the patient would be having.
The other procedure would probably be a line placement, so that would be what we combine it with. I don't think we've done we've had an ALD patient in a long time at MSK, but we've done we do a lot of other non-heme diseases, a lot of metabolic diseases. I think the procedure itself wouldn't change based on it being ALD.
Just to jump in on that, we've done this procedure in Boston with ALD patients, and I think some of the other, Minnesota, Stanford, a lot of the other sites have done it as well.
Right, it's like standard.
Any other questions for Anne? Okay, thank you so much.